express yourself and have your say. The walls are thin, sirens blare, the tables sit near folding chairs, the stage is set with paint and glue, and love went into every screw. The light shine bright on every star, they come to play from near and far. The light shine bright on every star, they come to play from near and far. The listening room, the hearing room, a place to find a home to play. The listening room, the hearing room, express yourself and have your say. Hearing room, a listening room. You're welcome here, so have no fear. The hearing room, the hearing room. Come in, my friend, where art can bloom.
And welcome to the Woodshed podcast. I'm Aaron Tornberg, and this is the Hearing Room. Today, I have David Tierney with me. How are you doing today, David?
I'm doing very well, thank you.
Okay, great. David's going to talk about music and his life, and how music has helped him and affected him throughout that life. He has a lot of interesting stories, and David has his own radio show as well that I've been on. So Turnabout is fair play. And now you're
Welcome
on mine.
anytime. You're welcome anytime, Aaron. It was great. We did
So-
two whole shows we did.
We did 2 shows, and we'll do some more.
Great.
But what I want to do first is talk about the Hearing Room. As always, we have several events that happen every week, and some events that are monthly, and some special events. But we have on Monday night the podcast. We also put the podcast up on Thursdays for the pre-recorded stuff. And we also have on Tuesdays an open mic. Tuesday, 7 to 10, at the Hearing Room, there is an open mic. And it's a lot of fun. You can come, and you don't have to have any particular level of experience. It's an open mic. So you come in, you try it out, try to become a little better. And it's a very supportive environment. Then we have on Wednesday, 7 to 10, David does this a lot, Let's Have Words. Let's Have Words is a spoken word open mic. So you can come and read your poetry. Often there's a featured poet or writer who will come and read pieces. And I know David reads some of his. So that's a good one to go to. You can really, it's almost like a Chautauqua. You can just learn all kinds of stuff. And then we have on Thursdays the Singin' Jam. That's Mark Alio's event, where there is a big group of people and everybody plays with the words and chords on the screen, so you can follow along. You can do solos, but everybody plays together, and it's a lot of fun, particularly because it's a very social evening. It's kind of everybody's all over the place, talking and playing and having a great time. And then on Friday nights, we're doing some new events. We've been doing some jams. I've got the acoustic jam, which used to be the Irish jam lately, but it's going to now be the acoustic jam on first Friday of the month. And then on the third Friday of the month, we have the bluegrass jam, and that's going to be also continuing. But then on the second and fourth and fifth Fridays, we're going to be doing some new events that are participatory, so stay tuned for that. There could be all kinds of stuff coming up. And we may do songwriters on the round and other things, but it will be a fun time. So check that out. Again, our website is hearingroom.net, if you don't know, and you should check that out. All these events are on there. Then on Saturdays, we have various things, performance lab, drone night, all kinds of stuff. Drone night's a lot of fun. It's basically make a lot of noise with electronic instruments and do it all at once until you create a drone. And it's surprisingly relaxing after you get over the overwhelming part of it. But it sort of becomes a Zen wall of noise. So it's a fun night, the drone night. Keep an eye out for that. And then on Sundays, we have the drum circle 12:30 to 1:30, and we have the open mic that I run 2 to 5. Sunday nights vary, but keep an eye on the calendar. Sometimes there's film night, sometimes there's a music night. It just depends on the week. But we got stuff every day of the week here at the Hearing Room, so please check our website, hearingroom.net, for more information. We also have an affiliation with the Greenville Junction Shop. And the Greenville Junction Shop is a secondhand store. They have all kinds of items there, and you can go and look at them online, purchase them at Greenville, New Hampshire, and Clinton, Massachusetts. They have the store. And you can look on Facebook Marketplace, and they do have a website up, but I'm not sure it's really ready to be completely released yet. But pretty soon, we will announce that. And then we also have, at the Greenville Junction Shop, they have computer stuff. They have furniture. They have household items, toasters, whatever. All kinds of things. It's great. I've actually bought a few things from them. And, it's good to do what they call upcycling, which means you get used stuff that's perfectly good and you continue using it, because we don't need to waste for no reason. Things can be fixed. We don't fix enough things lately.
I agree.
And instead of fixing it, we tend to just get rid of it. And I would prefer to fix them. So, they can help you with that at the Greenville Junction Shop. However, you need to know the spelling of Greenville Junction Shop, because they are spelled Greenville, Greenville, but then the word junk, Junk, is in junction, as in junction, Junktion, and they have the old spelling of shop, shoppy, Shoppe. So if you want to go and check them out, they're on Facebook, Greenville Junction Shop. So check them out. They sponsor the show. They help the Hearing Room. They're a great organization. Okay, so that's my part.
That's great word trivia, too. I love that.
It is. Junction.
Yeah, right.
So, David, I know a little of your story, but, I don't know as much about where you were born and kind of your younger life. Can you start with that?
I'd love to. Thank you very much, Aaron. It's a delight to be doing this. I was born in Waltham, Massachusetts, which for a long time was known as the Watch City, because Waltham Watch was right there. In fact, it was very close to Waltham Hospital, where I was born on March 8th. I have a note from my mother to give me the weather forecast, the time, the road conditions, everything. And it's funny how I've carried these things forward, but it was on Waltham Hospital was located on Hope Avenue. And again, a lot of these things in my life sort of tie back together again. The parish that I belonged to growing up as a kid was St. Jude's, which is patron saint of the hopeless.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And Waltham also happens to be the mother of city of Lowell.
Yeah?
Yes, and this is the reason why. At the time, England had developed water-powered mills, and that was the latest, greatest technology of the day. A group of people from here went over there, observed very carefully, were not allowed to make designs or notes or anything like that, but with the photographic memory came back here and said, I think I know how they're doing it. Oh, yeah, really? Well, show us. So the first one was built, believe it or not, on the Charles River, which eventually became the watch factory, that building.
Okay.
In fact, my mother worked at Puritan Dress by the waterfalls on Moody Street. But so anyway, the idea worked, okay? So they said, okay, great, it works. Now we need a bigger river. So that's what brought the mills to Lowell and Lawrence, and that's why we call it the mother city of Lowell. In fact, another interesting thing, while I was born in Waltham, we lived on Lowell Street.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so it's all like coming home.
Yeah,
So anyway,
it's fate.
Yeah. But I get a big kick out of that because the 8th of March is not only my birth date, but it's also the day that the Marines landed at Da Nang. We'll talk about that later on. Mm-hmm. And it's also International Women's Day, God's gift to women. Okay. I had nothing to do with it. Talk to my mother.
Okay, so it's all her fault.
Yeah. And there's a fourth thing about March 8th. It happens to be my first day on the radio.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, so I remember that. Anyways, that ties together. So anyway, I grew up in a Irish Catholic, very strict household. My dad was one of 5 children. He was very, very handy. He literally made his own first car from junk he hauled home from the dump that was only about a block away in Waltham where they were growing up. And so he worked at the Boston Naval Shipyard for 35 years. Again, I have an album full of his certificates of award and achievement and all that sort of thing. And I went to parochial school from kindergarten right through the 12th grade, which was St. Mary's in Waltham, which is now a retirement community. And I was taught by the Christian Brothers, and I admired them. They were great. And one of the problems I had as a student confounded my parents endlessly. In school, I basically daydreamed all day long. But when it came time for things like a test or an entrance exam, I scored very, very high. And they said, well, how come you can do that and you can't do well? I don't know. But anyway, I got put into an advanced class in my freshman year in high school, and I immediately sank to last in the class by the midterm. So they transferred me to what they call the slow group. There was the A and the B was the slower group. And there I excelled. I went to the head of the class, on top of my class, in the B group by the end of the year and stayed there till I graduated. I graduated, and one of my favorite subjects was English. The other was religion, and I always did. And that seemed to come naturally to me. In fact, if you were to use a single adjective to describe David Tierney, it would be spiritual. That's what it is. And I don't know, it's just sort of innate, and I'm blessed with that. So it seemed to me to be a very logical thing to join the Christian Brothers, where I would have the religious life very intense, and also the academic life as well, to be a teacher. That's what the Christian Brothers were. They were founded in Reims, France, by St. John Baptiste de La Salle. And our mission was to teach boys, because there were a lot of, as in Lowell, a lot of mills over there, and there were a lot of children that were orphan children, and so we taught boys. And we took 5 vows, usually here of poverty, chastity, and obedience. We also had gratuity and stability. Gratuity meant that we taught for free. In other words, we had to beg for alms, have drives, and to support us.
Right.
And stability meant you would never aspire to be a priest. In other words, you were a brother who stayed a brother forever, and if you wanted to be a priest, leave the order and go there and do that.
Explain, I don't know a lot about this.
Okay.
But so when you're a brother, I think monk.
Exactly, same thing.
Okay, but what does that mean? Because you say you can't be a priest, but you're in a holy order.
Correct. No, you don't. For example, a brother, a lay, we call lay religious, as opposed to sacerdotal, which is the priestly order. Okay, they can administer sacraments. As a lay religious, I'm just a layman like you. I just happen to be living in a monastery and wearing black all day and not talking and devoting myself to studying theology and teaching kids. But I liked that. I was very comfortable with that. But I also I was drawn to teaching too. And I was in dramatics, believe it or not, for 2 years. My last 2 years in high school. I say believe it or not because actually, as a kid growing up, I'm what you'd call a quiet kid. All my friends, all my pals in my neighborhood, they all went to public school, so they talked about their friends in public school. I'm at parochial school, literally right next door, North Junior in Waltham and St. Mary's. There was a chain link fence divided us, but they had their friends, and my friends from St. Mary's. They're all commuters to Concord, Lexington, all over the place. So when I came home, they weren't around. So that contributed it too. I think the other thing is that my father, for example, never had an interest in sports. Most men have an interest in sport, some sport that they kind of follow, and the son and the offspring usually pick it up. And why did you play? Well, my dad was always interested. So I was always building things, always making things, crafting things down in my little workshop down in the cellar, and I enjoyed it. And I was very good. I inherited my father's gift with my hands. I'm very handy with a lot of things. And except I don't fix cars. The reason I don't like fixing cars, this is a part of my personality too.
Okay.
I don't want to fix a car. I don't want to fix somebody else's problem. There's only one way to fix it, the way it tells you in the book. I want to build a car from scratch.
Yeah.
That's where I'm coming from. So So I did. I was a very marginal student all the way through grade school. Amazingly, got into St. Mary's, and my parents. The big threat was, if you don't improve, we're going to send you to trade school. That might have been like throwing Brer Rabbit into the thorn bush. He loved it.
Yeah.
But I didn't go there. But that was the thing. But anyway, so I joined the Brothers. The other vow, I want to explain something about chastity, because a lot of people mix up chastity and celibacy. They just mush them together. No, it's not the same thing. Technically, to fine-tune it, celibacy means you do not marry. Chastity means you do not have sex. So we as brothers took a vow of chastity so we could not have sex, but we could marry them. The priests, on the other hand, they had just the opposite. Mm-hmm. And it was crazy. But anyway, it's a fine distinction. But all of that, and it suited me fine. And I love the life. I love studies. I loved English. I even had to master Latin because I flunked it so many times. There was no way I could get around it except to master it and pass. As a matter of fact, this is a funny story. My sophomore year, as a Christian brother at Catholic University of America in Washington, D.C., we had the final exam, and it was involved a translation, and I got it perfect, and I got an A in the thing, and the brother, who was my instructor, flunked me anyway. So I went in to see him. I said, what's this about? I got an A. He says, yeah, Brother David, with your track record, academic track record, for you to ace the final exam, you had to have cheated. That's why I'm flunking you.
Yeah. Did you argue it?
Hey, yeah, but, hey, it can just go so far with that.
Yeah.
Interestingly enough, while I was in the Brothers, I got involved with what we call the garage. We all had chores after work, after breakfast. So you got up in the morning at 5 o'clock, which came second nature to me because I was getting up. I was an altar boy all through grammar school and high school, so getting up for the 7 o'clock, no problem. And then we had breakfast. We did meditation. We called it mental prayer, but it's meditation on your knees for an hour every morning. Then we had mass. Then we had breakfast. Then we had chores. We had what we call labor, and everybody had an assignment, and they would change now and then. But I always ended up in the garage, which ties into things that happened to me later on in life involving vehicles.
Yeah.
So anyway, after 3 years, I was getting very restless. I just felt there was more to life. I learned a lot about life from the other brothers that I was going through the monastery with and brotherhood with. They would tell stories about that. Gee, my family wasn't like that. I didn't do any of that, So I felt like I want a second chance at my life. It's part of it. And one of the reasons that kept me there, I felt if I left the order, I would not be able to maintain the level of spirituality that I had there. And that bothered me. Mm-hmm. And believe it or not, that has not been sacrificed. It's been realized today. And in fact, I think I tell people I'm more apostolic today than had I stayed in the Brothers, meaning doing good works and living my life with people and the normal sort of life.
Right.
So anyway, I left in 1963, and very naively, I ran down to the selective service system and told them, I'm no longer a student. So you 4H, you 1A, 4H, 1A, letters and numbers, what does that mean? And I got a letter from the Boston Army base. Come in here for a physical. I said, I don't need a physical. I'm in great health. He said, we know. You're being drafted. I said, what? Oh, gosh, drafted. I don't want to be drafted. I just want to get my college education and get on with my life. I wasn't anti-anything. I was just anti-service. It was 4 years of a vacuum, nothing going on.
Right.
And I didn't want to do that. So I'm going in the bus to the Boston Army base in South Boston. And I'm before the corpsman, and they're examining me. And I'm sitting there. I told them, look at like a flat feet. See that? Flat feet, flat on the floor. You got a note from the doctor? No. What hospital are you born at? Waltham. Okay, we're going to research this. We're going to re-examine you in 6 months. So sure enough, nothing came of that examination, research rather. So they called me in a second time. I said, yeah, but I got a bad back. A bad back? How bad? Well, it depends. I could be bending over, tying on my boots someday, and the back goes out. I'd be totally useless for the rest of the day. Now, you wouldn't want that now, would you? Oh, no, okay. We're going to research that. Call you back in 6 months. This is the third time around, because if you intentionally lie, it is perjury. Mm-hmm. And it is serious. And they do mean things to you if they find out that you're one of those. But I was willing to chance it anyway. That's how much it meant to me to not be involved with any kind of service. So they finally classified me. In the third exam, I told them I wet the bed. That was perfect. That was 1Y. That means you're basically, when people in wheelchairs go, you're safe. I can continue my work, continue going to school. I was going to Boston State 2 nights a week. Mm-hmm. Again, still in English, and working during the day and living in a one-room apartment. in Watertown. It was wonderful. I enjoyed it. Then in 1965, March of 65, the Marines landed in Da Nang Beach, and suddenly there's this war in Vietnam, and as President Kennedy said, we will help any neighbor, I forget exactly his words in his inauguration, but that was the commitment that got us there. Mm-hmm. And so in order to encourage people to join the service, they said, we are thinking of, they hadn't yet, but thinking of reestablishing the GI Bill to encourage people to join. The hooker was you had to be serving a combat zone. I think, this is good. College education, go past go, collect $100, and don't go to jail. See, first to fight. It's the Marines. So I walked down to the recruiting office in downtown Waltham behind City Hall, and I walked in the recruiter's office, and I said, how is the water ski in the Gulf of Tonkin? He said, it's excellent. I said, what's your shortest enlistment? He said, 3 years. I'll take it. Can you run 3 miles? I said, I've been running the Boston Marathon since 1964, sure. Do you like guns? I said, I got in trouble with guns. My father was an ordnance mechanic. I got in trouble with guns since the 7th grade in parochial school. I wasn't doing crime. I was fascinated with how they worked, the mechanics of it. I built a crossbow one summer out of a cow leaf spring, cut it down, built the stock, the trigger mechanism. Yeah, I love guns. He says, all right, okay. Now the recruiter thinks, I'm going to make quota. This guy's a winner. I've got him. Well, you've been before the selective service. Oh, yes, sir. 3 times in the past 2 years. What's your classification? 1Y. 1Y? He says, yes, but this is the reason why it's 1Y, and I explained my way out of that, just like I explained my way into all the excuses that kept me out for 2 years. And he said, okay, son, I got a quota, and you're on it. And miraculously, I got in there, and the Marine Corps and I, we fit like hand in glove. All the discipline, I was always like that. That was second nature to me. So, and I learned that from my mother, Iron Irene, the scream in my dream. She says, David, why do you say scream? I said, Mom, remember I had to grow up with you. But I learned a lot of good lessons from her, all kinds of things. Not only did I learn how to wash and iron my clothes and cook, she'd leave me up in the woods a week at a time by myself, up in Groton, on the lake. And we had a pump. My mother was also a dowser, a water witch, so she'd find it that the willow stick would point out, it's there, we'd dig it, and it's there. And she'd go off back to Waltham to do what she was doing, and I loved it. I loved it.
What changed you really to being interested in the military from being essentially wanting nothing to do with it? What happened?
It was all about the GI Bill. Very, very simple. I joined the Marine Corps to get a college education. I mean, the war, okay, that sounds like a good thing. And the Marines guarded the gate at Boston Naval Shipyard where my dad worked, and he always came home and talked about the Marines, looked so sharp at the gate, and da-da-da-da. And you see the posters and everything else, and all the lore of the Marines. I mean, well, I don't want to join the Army. I'll do something dumb like drive a truck or something, So I joined the Marines. What was my MOS? 3531, heavy truck operator. But what motivated me, it was simply that. But then I really didn't think about how nasty the war was and the whole thing behind it. I became aware of that as I was serving. In fact, by the time I arrived in Vietnam, which was December 5th of 1967, the protests were going pretty strong in this country. And you were listening to them and, you're questioning it. And I got there, and within a matter of like a few days, I could see, I had a sense of the hopelessness of the whole thing, the attitude of the civilians. They didn't care. They didn't want us there. In fact, the Vietnamese call it the American War. It says, oh, yeah, I was there for the Vietnam. No Vietnam War. It was American War. You guys came, And again, that was a civil war. So, in hindsight, I would say we should have not gone in there at all. Mm-hmm. At all. I mean, they would have run their own country just the way they're running it today. It would be strict. It may be communist. It may not be our belief system, but the population is doing well. They're productive, and leave them alone. And actually, the same could be said of the Korean War. My sister, when she was at Bentley University, they had these films they would show every month. And so one of our little dates, excuse to see my sister and spend some time with her, we'd go up, we'd have we'd get the special at the Chateau on School Street in Waltham, then run up there, watch the film. And there was a documentary that was done in secret, it was filmed in both North and South Korea. Mm-hmm. And it had to be done very secretively because if these people had ever known they were being filmed, it could jeopardize their lives, literally. Mm-hmm. But on both sides, North and South, they said, if it weren't for the United States, we would be one country today. And both people on the North and the South said that. And so Vietnam War to me didn't prove anything. It was a farce. It was, But so how did I reconcile that with my service? And I had to go through this in my own conscience. How do I unravel this? No, I know this is not the right thing, but here I am. And I signed a contract to serve my country. Mm-hmm. And that's what it came down to. My allegiance was to my country and to my contract and to my word that I put on and I signed on that piece of paper. And that's how I reconciled with myself. I'm doing my duty. I'm serving my country. I'm not getting disoriented by some of what's going on in the scenery out there.
Now, what was it like when you first got there? I mean, what do you think? What goes through your head?
Got there in Vietnam?
Yeah.
Well, I spent a year in Okinawa before I went to Vietnam. So mm-hmm. Then I entered Vietnam from Okinawa on a commercial flight, and you come in from Okinawa. It's not that far, and the plane drops. Mm-hmm. They kind of tell you this with approaching landing, but the idea you drop is to avoid ground fire as you're landing. So I got there in the middle of the night, and they put us up in these wooden barracks. They called it the Da Nang Hilton. They were wooden barracks, 2-story wooden barracks, very typical, but there's mud and stuff everywhere. The sheets are dirty, and it's a transient area, so people are coming and going. There are guys coming out of out of Vietnam, going back home, mm-hmm. and there's us newbies coming in because we got the Start utility. Hey, I got a new one here,
Right.
And these guys are coming in from the field, and they are orange. The clay gets the dust. It works its way into the pigmentation of your skin and everything, and your clothes. So they're all looking kind of reddish. This red clay look about them all. Whoa, what are we in for? So there's a little story here. There's an electrician here in Lowell, Mercier. Mm-hmm. And he and I were on the same plane flight from Okinawa into Da Nang. He looked it up in government records. That's how we mm-hmm. know. We didn't know each other at the time. We now know each other. And then the next morning we woke up, Da Nang, we got on a KC-130, we went up to somewhere else, and we were on that same flight as well. But from there, we got our orders to exactly where we were going to locate. So the quality of life and living conditions was steadily going down. Mm-hmm. I spent a night overnight in Dong Ha, but I had the Sergeant Major's tent. That wasn't bad. Okay, then I go up to Dong Ha, and it's these underground bunkers. And they were kind of spooky looking too, and there's no vegetation, so it's like wow. And you look around, you don't see much, and there are no civilians either. Mm-hmm. We were on the DMZ, and it's a free fire zone, which means if it moves and it's not you, it's fair game. You don't have to worry about killing peasants or farmers or water buffalo. So there wasn't a lot going on. I went out. I was scared to death. Mm. I'm a brand new lieutenant. I come in to take over a platoon of 45 men, and I don't have a platoon sergeant. Well, I do have a platoon sergeant, but he was worthless. So what they lost before me, both the platoon sergeant, Sergeant Corbett, who had been a drill instructor in Parson, he had those guys all lined up like dogs. Mm-hmm. And they loved him, and he was great. Then you had Lieutenant Rate, who was very smart. He's the first lieutenant. He became company executive officer. So they both left at the same time. Usually they leave one, then the other, so there is some sort of overlap between the two of them. So I get this brand new platoon. I'm as fresh as butter. And, believe in everything. I just was taught down in Quantico for 6 months and having to put it to the test and go out with these guys. And I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being a platoon leader. Again, it's sort of like the brothers, you're a teacher, so you have a classroom full of boys. Mm-hmm. Now you're a lieutenant and you have a platoon of men. It's a very similar kind of situation. And it is learning. You're always teaching. You're always going over fundamentals. And they were salty. Obviously, they'd been in country. They'd been in country a while. So, and I'm like, my map and compass reading, that's fundamental. You got to know that. You got to know that. Not only to know where you're going, because there are no street signs over there, if you're calling what they call calling fire. In other words, you walk out on a patrol, you encounter the enemy, and you want to call in some artillery rounds, you better know where you're at in order to do that correctly, or you may end up hurting yourselves. That does happen. It has happened. In fact, it happened in my platoon after I gave it up. What it was actually a short round in the tube. In other words, the lands and grooves in the artillery piece were apparently worn, so it wasn't getting the full pressure, and it fell in the platoon. Anyway, so I wanted to go out there and find out. So I started going out with squad-sized patrols. There's only 13 men on the squad, supposedly. And my squad, I was lucky if I had a lance corporal to lead it. And so I went out with them, the first one, and it happened to be the Hispanic squad. I had one squad that was all Hispanic kids. They were great. And there was like a Mutt and Jeff pair that ran the squad. I couldn't tell. Now, one of these guys is the squad leader. How come the squad leader's not running the show instead of always talking to Mutt over here? So anyway, we're going out on this patrol, and I said, look, I'm just going around. I just want to I'm going for the ride. I just want to get the lay of the land, see how you guys operate, see what's going on. So I was like 2/3 of the way back. As we're going out the wire is a triple concertina barbed wire that is your barrier from the landmines that are spread out for about 50 feet. And then there's another rack of triple concertina. You're going out, you lock and load, and off you go. Now, a patrol is given out as a series of compass points. From this point, you set your compass, you go to there. When you arrive there, so each point that you make on the patrol is dependent on the accuracy of the previous point. And so we're going out, in about the third leg out, even before that, we're going out the wire, and Mutt and Jeff are having a conference up there. What's the conference about? Mm-hmm. And they got the map out, and they're pointing and this and that. So I'm not wanting to be obtrusive, but I said, there's something going on here. I'm going to find out what's going on. So I walked up to the front and said, what seems to be the problem? Well, Lieutenant, we can't decide whether we want to go to that tree over there or that rock over there. I said, well, if you're marching off on a compass point, what difference should it make? And I just turned around and went back. I said, okay, I'm finding out. They can't read a compass accurately. They just take whatever path happens to be convenient and kind of close to what they want. Now, remember, we have pre-registered fires along that patrol route. So if you walk into something, you don't have to go through the whole thing of what they call column adjusting fire till you get it right on target before you fire the barrage. You can, the first round, fire out the barrage. You know exactly where it's going to land. But that in relation to you that's another, you need to know where you're at. So we get the third leg out, and I'm getting rather concerned again that we're off course. We're not where we should be. So one of the things you can do over there, if that happens, is you can fire what they call request a Willie Peter round. That's white phosphorus. It's an illumination grenade. They usually use them at night to illuminate the battlefield, but you can also use it as a spotting round. If you get lost, you call in for a spotting round on this particular position. Okay, that's where that is. Now we're over here. We got to get over there. So third leg out, I'm having this concern. So I stopped the patrol. I called up my radio operator, Gomer Pyle. That was his nickname. Right. And now, I never saw the Gomer Pyle movie on television. You know, I don't watch much until Gomer Pyle, U.S. Marine, but I never watched it. So I didn't have any idea what it was about. So as I'm meeting the platoon the first day, they're saying, oh, yeah, wait till Lieutenant meets Gomer. So it came, and I walked up to him. I knew who it was before I walked up to him. I said, hello, my name, I'm Lieutenant Tierney. I'm the new platoon commander. What's your name? Sir, it's Gomer Pyle, but you just can call me Gomer. Everybody else does. His real name was Jimmy Mason, but he was my radio operator. He was my radar. You know radar in MASH? Right. My Gomer was my radar. He was my radio man, but he knew everything about everybody. He knew the serial number of their gun, their blood type, and all of that stuff. Right. So I called him up and said, hey, Gomer, call in a Willie Peter round on this position, this map position right here. So then we all sit down and wait. Now, this is the true test of the lieutenant. This is their first patrol with me, my first patrol with them. Does he know what he's talking about? Can we believe this man? If it lands over your head, you're on the money. And if it lands somewhere else, you are off. It landed over our heads. That was the night I started doing classroom drills with these guys. Weapons, map reading, first aid, all that sort of stuff. But that's what it is, fundamentals over and over. And again, you're always teaching. And what I said, the difference between a leader and a manager manages for objectives. He's interested in the bottom line, numbers, money. A leader, it's a personal commitment. He's interested in the individual. And that's what a Marine leader is. He's interested in each one of his men individually and he's bringing them all along because you're always training for your own replacement. And that's where the leadership skills come out very strongly. In fact, Jim Mattis, Mad Dog Mattis, who was the Secretary of Defense, has written an excellent book. I've read it twice now, called Call Sign Chaos. I highly recommend it, especially the first third of the book. And he talks about his own boyhood growing up and, what made him hardy and, the Marine that he is. But it's an excellent book. By the way, he never ever will say, again, because of his oath, because of his allegiance, say anything negative about the President of the United States. He respects the office. But in fact, part of the book is his letter of resignation, which is quite interesting. They decided to just have a difference of opinion. So anyway, that was my baptism into the jungles of Vietnam. And as I say, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the leadership. It's pressure. You're always busy from morning till night.
Yeah. So the situation in Vietnam that you went into, about what year did you go in?
It was December of '67, and I went out in January of '68.
So that was kind of just the middle of the war, kind of, isn't it?
It was. It was also the high point of the war, too.
Yeah.
Because the Tet Offensive was the high point of the war. We had put on maximum pressure at that time. In fact, we lost a lot of lieutenants out of our class. There were 498 second lieutenants graduated November 1, 1967 from Quantico Basic School. 85% of us right away are grunts, infantry. We know where we're going. Some are artillery, some are tanks, and a few admin and legal, and that's it. But we were losing a lieutenant a week over there. But when I got there, it was very quiet in December. It had been mysteriously quiet, and everybody knew that. I said, wow, this is not too bad. I'm expecting all kinds of stuff going on, And so we're getting kind of comfortable. And right around Christmas time, we decided we were going to go further north and look for some action. So we took the entire battalion out. We changed location. It was an all-day march, about 12 miles. And on the day that I got hit, it was January 27th. So the quiet was the build-up into Tet. That was what was going on. But no one knew that. NSA didn't know it. CIA didn't know it. And the other thing that happens over there is a lot of times you get these intelligence reports, and sometimes you're very skeptical of them. Like one night there was going to be a bombing raid from north to south. Really? They don't have an Air Force. But they do have an Air Force, but it never happened.
Right.
That never happened.
So when you were there, did you go into battle situations very often? Or, I mean, I know you were shot at one point,
yes,
which you can talk about later, but just generally, like, you're in this bunker.
I didn't even, it was close. In the thick of it, where I'm actually running a platoon in the middle of a firefight, that never happened. Again, it was a very quiet time. Nothing ever happened on the patrols that I went on. So, but they were all around us, and they did give you a little reminder every now and then. Like once on this same battalion sweeper going out, and I'm point. We're the first ones out of the wire. We're in the lead. I had my second squad with me. Had my first and my third to my right and left flanks. We're going out the wire. We lock and load. It's like if you've ever ridden a bicycle in a bicycle club. They all reach a certain point in a curve or a hill, and everybody clicks their gears. Click, 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 click. It's musical. Well, that's the sound of locking and loading as you're going out the wire. So we went out the wire, and we suddenly get the word to stop. Halt, someone's been shot. How could someone be shot? We're in the very front. How'd that happen? My second squad leader accidentally shot himself through the thigh with his .45. He locked and loaded the .45. When you do that, you also cock the hammer. Now it's a hair trigger. Fumbling in the dark, the thing went off and through his thigh. And he was a good squad leader. But anyway, where were we? What was the question?
It was about what kind of firefight action you saw, like where, and also did you ever have to look down the barrel at another human being?
No.
Okay.
No, I never did, and that's a strange thing. And what happened is, I went through Paris Island. I was ex-enlisted. I was enlisted for 2 years. I was a corporal before when I got my commission. They call that a Mustang. He's an ex-enlisted who gets a commission. And so I No, I never fired a weapon the whole time I was there. Again, it wasn't my job, frankly. I was talking about the M14. That I knew inside out and backwards. In fact, I went to the range with the M14 a couple of years ago over in Westford, and I thought I shot a 97 out of 100. I was a good shot. And I loved that weapon. I knew it. But the M16 was just being introduced, and those things were jamming like crazy. They were very sensitive to any sort of dust or dirt. In fact, I just read a piece the other day about a Marine that was over there. He said you'd fire 4 shots, you have to break it all down, clean out the barrel and everything else all over again, get the jam shell out. And a lot of people lost their lives with the M16. They don't want to talk about that, but that is what was going on, and a lot of that. And I heard that. And again, I hadn't gone to... When you go to the range with your weapon, you're there for 2 weeks. You sleep with it. You can put it together, disassemble it, blindfold, and that's one of the things you do. You need to be able to do that. Very, very comfortable with it. It's your baby. It's your life. Your rifle. It really is. So I didn't want to carry one for that reason. The other reason was knowing me, how I jump into things. You know, I'm the Action Jackson type. If there's action, I'm there. And I can just see myself getting involved in something I shouldn't get involved in, meanwhile losing control of my platoon. And that's the other reason I didn't do it. In hindsight, I would have been smarter to carry one, even if I didn't have any ammo.
Right.
Just to give the appearance, it's another grunt, ignore him. But the one without anything on, that's the leader, get him. And they were very good at that. The North Vietnamese were very good at that. They were excellent shots. They were excellent. They were very disciplined. A lot of casualties. I'm surprised how many casualties I read about that are shot in the head. It's amazing. It's a lot of them. But so anyway, I guess the worst combat I ever had was the day I was shot. I mean, other times I would have one night I had to go out and lead a platoon that had got out there, stepped in some stuff with the North Vietnamese, and realized there was overwhelming forces, so they wanted to come back to base and just leave those guys alone, try to get away from them. But what they're doing is they're following them in. They would do that. So they didn't know where the openings and the lines were, because I was now in the battalion operations center. I was assistant operator. And one of the things I had to do was map out the fire defense plan. When you set into a new location, you set up your perimeter, you dig your fighting holes, you establish lines, where all your companies are located, where your platoons are located, where you have intersecting fields of fire, all that sort of stuff. I would do that. So since I was familiar with that, they sent me out to lead them back in. So what am I going to do? What I did is I lit a cigarette. And I told them that. I told the group coming in, I said, I'm going to have a lit cigarette. Follow that cigarette. That's me. I'll take you back through the lines. But again, was I getting shot at? No, not really. Not directly. So I never even fired, not even what they call familiarization fire. I didn't even do that. I carried a 45, but I never shot it.
So we're at about the halfway point in the show.
Okay.
And I know you had talked about some music, since this is mostly a music podcast. And I thought, the part a little while ago you talked about being there for your soldiers.
Yes.
I thought the one you suggested, I'll Be There, would be a good one to play right there.
Exactly.
But
and that's the way we thought of that too.
Yeah. And the music there, you said, was very important. So we'll talk a little more about that when I finish the break.
Sure.
But I am going to play "I'll Be There" before, and then we'll play some other stuff too. But and I also want to hear about what you're doing now and what you've been doing at the barbershop and other stuff like that.
Thank you. Happy to do that.
All right, so I'm going to cut in here and say that we are at the hearing room. We're interviewing David Tierney, and he is a DJ at UMass Lowell at WUML, and he is a Vietnam veteran. He's told us some about that, but he also comes to the hearing room quite a bit, and he has told us these stories before at the hearing room. And he comes here pretty regularly on Sundays for the open mic.
Love it.
And also for the Let's Have Words. He's been there a lot, too. So David is a big supporter. He is a member of the hearing room. And membership is something that I want to talk about because it's very important to keep the hearing room going. We need to have money to pay the rent and to pay the bills. And if you come and pay your membership, which is $100 a year at the moment, we really can use that money and we can support ourselves on it to continue to pay rent, to continue to provide the kinds of programs we do. It's difficult to put together a 7-day-a-week schedule.
It's as rich as this is.
Yeah.
There's so much here, the offerings.
Right, and we are a place for artists. We're a place for people who love the arts, and we are always trying to come up with new programming. And so please think about becoming a member of the Hearing Room. The Hearing Room is a 501c3 nonprofit, so I believe your donation of $100 will be tax deductible. You can check with your accountant on that to confirm. And if you want to know more, check out our website, hearingroom.net, and you can find out how to become a member, or you can come here in person. And also, I wanted to thank again the Greenville Junction Shop. And the Greenville Junction Shop is in Greenville, New Hampshire, and Clinton, Massachusetts.
2 locations.
It's 2 locations. And it also is online, so you can see what they have at the locations. You don't have to drive there first. You can actually do your shopping online a little bit. And they have all kinds of new items all the time. They're always going to estate sales, garage sales. And by the way, they can clean out your garage and your estate if you want. They do
some
that.
friends at the barber shop that used to do that.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. They don't do it anymore. They went to jail for the kind of that they were doing.
Well, that's not what this is.
I know.
This is estate sales and garage sales and storage units that don't get claimed. You know, they get sold off. So there's lots of places that they get the stuff. And it's also, it's environmentally friendly to reuse items. So you should check them out. Greenville Junction Shop, Junktion, Shoppy, Shoppe. So that's the Greenville Junction Shop, and now we are back talking to David Tierney. So let's start with, before we get into the later stuff.
Right.
So what were the conditions when you got shot?
Well, we have to back up a little bit. We were up very far in front of the DMZ, acting as a blocking force for the CBs who were behind us, building up what they call McNamara's Wall, or the Trace, we called it. And it was all defoliated, Agent Orange, and all that sort of stuff. It was like, we called it moonscape. I have pictures of it. And all you see is craters, bomb craters. There's no vegetation, nothing. No civilians, no animals, nothing. And so while we were in that position, in fact, the same when I described the previous situation where I had to lead a group in with a cigarette one night, that was the same position that we were in. And that's also where I dug a tremendously deep foxhole and had a captain fall in it one night. Anyway, so we realized we were up against overwhelming force, so we had to move. So we moved further south and west. We dug in there. Now the guys are getting really restless. Hey, we're moving all the time. In the Marine Corps, we say, home is where you dig it, literally. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we got in that position, and this was also the night that I slept with the bomb. I was digging my fighting hole, which was very close to the COC, since that was my work area. So you had your hooch that you slept in. That was usually a shelter half, little tent to keep the rain off you. But if you got under attack, you had your hole very close to your, because you'd be out of that tent and in that hole looking for the bad guys and hoping they didn't find you. Anyway, so I'm digging this hole, and it's late in the afternoon, which is not a good time to make a big tactical move like that, but we did. And I came across this thing, and it was round. It was and it's ticking. It's about the size of a water heater. I thought, oh my God, this is a bomb. Well, what would happen is with the monsoons, the ground would get very, very soft, and this is a lot of ordnance would hit the ground, be submerged into mud, but then hit an object down below and start coming out again. And that's what this thing had done. So it had gone down. It was completely buried on the surface. But it was, you could tell what had happened. So my thinking was, naive, or faith, whatever you want, foolishness, whatever it is. It hasn't gone off yet. Certainly it won't mind if I sleep one night with it and think about it. If it does go off, I won't even know it. Well, luckily the next morning I woke up, but then we got orders from the division that we had to move again. and we're not at all happy about this. There's a convoy coming out of Dong Ha, going out Highway 9 to relieve Khe Sanh, which is under siege. They're completely surrounded by the North Vietnamese, and they're going to be annihilated. It's going to be another Dien Bien Phu. They were not able to resupply them. Planes could no longer land on the runway. There were 2 KC-30s, which are big Hercules turbo, 4-engine turbo planes that they use for heavy stuff moving. And 2 of them got shot up on the runway. They couldn't airdrop them because the wind would carry our supplies. We're supplying our enemy with our supplies. Mm-hmm. So the only way to get anything there was by convoy. That meant a truck convoy out Highway 9. And intelligence had it that there was going to be an ambush along the route. And so it's our job to go out there, our entire battalion, as soon as possible, and sweep the highway ahead of the convoy and spring the ambush before the convoy hits it. Mm-hmm. So it took them, there's this thing called fragging. There's a term called fragging they talk about in Vietnam where someone shoots someone they don't like. Mm-hmm. There's another kind of fragging, and the best analogy I can give to you is think of yourself as a cab driver. You're going on a job, and the dispatcher cuts in on the radio and says, never mind that one, go over here instead. That's called fragmentation order. And there were a lot of those on with the helicopter pilots in Vietnam because they were always in demand. And to move a whole battalion in one day, it wasn't possible. It took us over a day to get there. In the meantime, Colonel Lowndes, who's the CO, the Marine CO, the colonel at Khe Sanh, is screaming for somebody. I said, I gotta have food, I gotta have ammo, I got some people I gotta evacuate. Only way we can get there. So he put a lot of pressure on the captain, the Motor T captain down in Dong Ha. He released the convoy didn't wait for us. And sure enough, they got right at the foot of Camp J.J. Carroll, and they sprung the ambush, and they annihilated the entire convoy. They either killed or wounded. They blew up the trucks and the tanks as well. We just landed. We're coming up the road the following afternoon, and the wreckers, which are tow trucks, to take away the big stuff, the wreckers are coming up the road to remove the vehicles. And so now that immediately aborted our mission. That was what we were going there for. So now what are we going to do? Let's see. There's a little bridge that went over this, a stream down there. They said, guard the bridge. And actually what was going to happen, and this is how clever the North Vietnamese were, they had mined the bridge to blow up. Let the convoy get across the bridge, blow the bridge. Now you've got them isolated, and you can annihilate them. They annihilated them anyway. They didn't need to even blow the bridge. So the next day, they were coming up the road. The Army engineers from down below were coming up to assess the damage, see what we need to do to rebuild the bridge. As soon as they did in the bow face and headed back, they blew the bridge. And 2 of them were killed. So now we're down on the valley floor, which is not a good thing. You always want to be on the high ground, and this is a valley. It's a valley. And this is the interesting thing if you've ever seen pictures of Vietnam. They're really, really interesting. It goes from the plains by the beach. It's nice, soft sand. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful country. But then as soon as you start hitting vegetation, all of a sudden these mountains, these things just rise up like church steeples. And it's heavy going there. So anyway, they sprang the ambush. They said, okay, let's take this hill over here. We want to get up on high ground. So again, I'm in COC, Combat Operations Center. So my mission was to go up that hill and recon the hill, reconnoiter the hill, see what it looks like, before we move up there. So myself, a captain, and a Sergeant E5 went up on that hill. And that hill was covered with what we call 782 gear. That's your canvas packs, your belts, all that equipment. They call it 782 because that was the government form, the number in the government form when you went down to supply to requisition your stuff. And so I didn't think it was a good idea. But I'm the lieutenant who just gave up his platoon because of 2 accidental shootings I had. So I wasn't about to speak up. But nevertheless, we went up there. It was rough. It was very, very rocky. It was very hard to dig. And the other thing about it, even though it's high ground, the vegetation is very thick. Anything that moved, you could see them. They weren't any higher than these bookcases. You could see everybody moving around up there. So you're sitting ducks up there. Mm-hmm. So nevertheless, we moved up to that hill that night. It was the night of the 26th. We woke up on the 27th, and we are surrounded on 3 sides by North Vietnamese Army regulars who have come even within our lines. Now, we don't know where the lines are. We haven't been there long enough to set up everybody's position to know where our lines really were. And I woke up that morning, and I had bullets going either side of my head impacted. So I dug out like a shelf. It was a steep hill, so I dug out like a shelf just to get my head and shoulders in with my feet going downhill. And what I would do over there, I would take a regular bath towel, fold it up 4 times, wrap it around my head, tie it on with the bootlace. So I covered my eyes and my ears. I didn't hear, I didn't see. If I woke up the next day, it was a good day. I started that practice the year I was stationed in Okinawa, because these Marines would come home after Liberty. They'd be drunk. They'd be some of them on drugs. They'd be fighting. They'd be vomiting. And I had to get up in the morning at 4 a.m. to take the colonel to work. So that's when I started doing that. I didn't know what they did. I didn't care. At 4 o'clock, I was up and out of there. So that's why I sat, and I did the same thing in Vietnam. And my thinking was exactly the same. If I get hit with a direct round, it's all over. If I wake up, I'm in the fight. So that's how I went to sleep. I woke up that morning. I took off my helmet, and whoa, this is close. Mm-hmm. And you can hear them all talking you can hear them talking. I call it chicken talk, whatever. It's Vietnamese, but it's high pitched, and it's it sounds like, to me it sounded like chickens. Anyway, and we have Marines interspersed with them. We don't know. You can't just fire at a sound. You may be hitting a Marine. Mm-hmm. So I went over to the COC that morning, which is nothing more than a big hole in the ground with other people in it, the battalion commander, the XO, all that other sort of stuff. But we had snipers attached with us, but we didn't know where they were since we had just moved up late that afternoon. I said, Lieutenant, go up the hill, find the snipers, bring them down, and position them to return the best fire, okay? Mm-hmm. So I went up the hill. Now, the hill is under fire. Every hole I passed, they were either killed or wounded, and they're telling me, go back, and all right, well, I'm looking for the snipers. Oh, they're not here. Okay, fine. So I went back down the hill, and I said, I can't find them. And the battalion commander said to me, Colonel Bindell said, Lieutenant, they're here on this hill somewhere. You find them. So now I went up the hill a second time, but even more dangerous than the first time. And finally someone said, yeah, they're down the hill. I said, well, thanks. And I'm crawling on my belly. This is what I'm doing. And I got far enough down the hill, I felt it was safe enough I could get up on my haunches and sort of duck walk down the hill. And I started doing that, and the round landed squarely between my feet. And I knew that was not a stray round. That was someone aiming at me. And the way you know that is when you work the rifle range in boot camp, you're changing the targets on these elevators up and down. You can tell a shot on your target simply by the sound. There's something really unique of it, but you hear it all the way, as opposed to shots to the left and right of your target. So when I had that one land, I knew that one had my name on it. There was nothing I could do. They said, why are you jumping a hole? There weren't any holes. There weren't any trees. That wasn't there. So you can imagine this. You're sighted. And so the second round entered below my knee, 3 inches below my knee, passed between the space between the tibia and the fibula. It was an armor-piercing round. It was solid steel. Had it hit the tibia, it would have just shattered it. They would have amputated my leg from below the knee. Blew out my whole calf muscle. It was an armor-piercing round. It was solid steel, not a lead slug. From there, it went inside my thigh, 8 inches at an inch deep, right along the femoral artery. Never cut the artery. That morning, I saw a Marine die of that very wound. When I was going up the hill, he had just been shot. When I came down the hill, he'd already bled out. Didn't hit that. Then grazed my scrotum. From there, it went right next to my sphincter. And that's where some of it still is. So you heard the story about the soldier in the grass? That was me. Mm-hmm. So that was, and I saw, I would call it almost a near-death experience. I didn't have the angel and the white light or any of that. But what I did see, you see your life pass before you, and it's not just the image. Emotionally, you're that child. And one of the first things I did, I cried like a baby from my mother once, and then very rapidly. But the emotions just release, and they're like, wow. It really, and I'm rocking and rolling. So I didn't even have time to say a Hail Mary. So I was starting to go out, and as I was going out, I called Corman a couple of times, and someone said, we hear you. And 2 Marines came over. They weren't Corman. They said, can you stand up? I said, I don't know. So we all 3 got up like this, and they opened up, and all 3 of us, we all 3 immediately hit the deck. And miraculously, they didn't hit either one of us. So what they did then, at that point, they took their hands in the armholes of my flak jacket, one on either side on their hands and knees, and they dragged me up the hill to a corpsman, gave me a shot of morphine. That was at 7:30 in the morning. I didn't get medevac till 1:30 in the afternoon. You do medevacs by priority. Emergency, the worst, highest, they go out first, then second. I was second tier medevac. And that was at 1:30 in the afternoon. So it's just like MASH. All of a sudden, you go into this thing, and there's like 4 doctors all with scissors cutting all your stuff off. They're washing you down with Betadine. They are going so fast, it's unbelievable. Like to change a bed sheet, wrapping you up, putting you on a stretcher. You're wrapped up like a candy bar on that stretcher with a big tag on you, telling you where you're going next and what your status is. Then the Catholic priest came over to me while I'm laying there to give me the last rites. I said, the last rites? The last rites? I mean, I may be getting off the bus today. You could. But obviously that didn't happen. But I didn't get out to the hospital ship until 10:30 that night. I went through from Dong Har. I went down to Da Nang. From Da Nang, I went on a helicopter, went out to the USS Sanctuary. It was a hospital ship anchored out in the South China Sea. And I got out there at about 10:30 at night. And remember, all I had in the morning were my ham and lime. Oh, by the way, even though I was getting shot at, I decided, again, my animal nature's talking to me. I'm going to go out in a full stomach.
Okay.
I could have ham and lime, then I went to work, then I got shot. But so anyway, they brought me in there, and the corpsman said, "Get over on that." I said, "I can't even move. You got to be kidding me!" So I finally get in. They X-rayed me. Went down to the operating room. My legs are up in stirrups like a woman having a baby. There's this big, huge light over me. All these people working on me. They gave me something a spinal. That was great. You don't even know you exist from there down, and something else to put me to sleep as if I needed that. I was pretty exhausted by the time I got there. So that was the first operation. And when they finished that operation, they applied a cast to my leg, a splint cast that went just above my knee to below my heel. That was to immobilize the leg so I wouldn't move, because I used to have strange movements, the nerves firing, doing odd things, So I was unconscious, and I didn't regain consciousness till the next morning. And the doctor came in. He's rattling this little pill bottle. He said, "Would you like a souvenir?" He says, "Yeah, okay." He says, "I took this out of you last night." I said, "Oh, really?" And there were 3 doctors. I was still asleep. They had to wake me up. They woke me up. And they unwrapped it to see what it is. And they said, "You're burned." I said, No, doc. I was conscious when I was shot. I was shot. I wasn't burned. "Well, you're burned now." And we found out what that was. The plaster they were using was this new plaster that didn't require cotton wrap. You usually put plaster on a cast. You put a cotton wrap to protect the skin from the lime that's in the plaster. It creates the heat to dry the plaster out. It's a chemical burn, but it burns just like fire. The backside of my leg, after they took the blister off, was like a piece of plastic, all black plastic. The only part, that wasn't burned was where I had gunshot wounds because Okay, we're back at it.
Yeah.
So, and that was also the most painful part of my recovery, was treating the burns. I was hospitalized for about 8 months. I went from the sanctuary. I went back to Okinawa. I had my second major operation there from Dr. Brill from Waltham, Massachusetts, at Camp Cooey Army Hospital. I knew it well. When I spent my year in Okinawa, I used to make trips over there for various reasons. I knew the lay of the land. So then I came back through Washington, D.C., and flew into Hanscom Air Force Base, and I was on a school bus fitted with stretchers and brought into Chelsea. And that's when I had my third operation, and then a lot of it had to do with the burns and debriding the burns and all that. But I healed pretty well. I'm alive. I'm happy about that, of course. I wake up every morning, I'm alive. I'm happy.
So when you got back, did you see much of the anti-war stuff going on?
I did. I was hearing about it even when I went over there. In fact, that was really bothered the troops. And I saw that in my platoon as soon as I got in touch with them. They wanted to know, what are they saying about it? What are they saying about it back home? I said, don't bother your head with that. Never mind what they're saying. We got a job, and the job is to get you home in one piece. That means we got to do our job here. So never mind that stuff. That's all peripheral. I didn't see too much of it. I wasn't surprised at it. They had something to say, and I was leaning in that direction anyway. I don't think this war is right. This is a huge betrayal. You learn this over time. Oh my God, we've been lied to, all of us. But we all got taken in on that. And then thank God for the protest movement, because it brought our awareness to what was really going on and why we shouldn't have been there at all, in my opinion.
Yeah, so this would be a good place to play the Bob Dylan song you suggested.
That would be...
that was... let's check.
Did I call it the Paranoia song?
Yeah, Times They Are A-Changin'.
Yes.
So you suggested that. What does that song mean to you?
Oof. Well, just the whole. Well, you look at the changes that I went through. I go from Christian brother to draft dodger. Then from draft dodger, you went from a draft dodger to being a Marine? Yeah. Well, how'd you get from the brothers to the Marines? So, well, that was changes going on in my life. There were very dynamic and dramatic changes coming out of the brothers, going into the Marines. And I really got to exercise a lot of myself that had already been there cooking, but sort of under wraps, since I was sort of, as I say, a quiet child growing up, to exercise a lot of abilities and talents that I never realized I had. They became actualized by my service in the Marine Corps, and I enjoyed that very, very much. And it's accelerated, I would say, my growth and development since,
So,
Did I answer the question?
Yeah. It makes sense. And so we'll play that here.
Good.
So there were some other songs that were representative of the anti-war movement. There's one in particular you mentioned, "Where Have All the Flowers Gone?"
Yes. And it's, I tell you exactly what was going through my mind when I would hear that too. Is, we were down in Quantico, and our graduating class was 498 lieutenants, and they were graduating class every month.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're sitting back there I'm thinking, man, there's a lot of people going over there. We've been over there for a while. Where are all these people going? They're coming home in green body bags.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the reality of it. As I say, in our class alone, we had more casualties than any other unit in combat since the Korean War. That's how fast they went.
Mm-hmm.
And so these songs and the lyrics in these songs play deeply, where have they gone? Where have they gone? We've been sold a bill of goods, and that struck very strongly with all of us. Right.
So does a song in particular play in your head when you think of the time?
Oh man, there's a lot of them. Unfortunately, I don't have them all cataloged in my head to reel off the names to you. But one of them was, I think, The Animals. Was it Eric Burton? We got to get out of this place.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yes, that rang. We realized that for sure. And as I say, it got to be, your mission is to stay alive and get out of here and get back home in one piece. That's your mission.
Right.
And so getting out of this place, that literally applied a lot. Look at the tactical moves that I made just before I got shot, that we made. You couldn't stay in one place long. You had to keep moving. So getting out of this place, if you're in Quezon, you want to get out of this place, let me tell you. And as I say, I was in Chelsea Naval Hospital, and I was treated very well. In fact, a strange thing is that one of the things that occurred to me after I'd been shot and I knew I was going to be a long-term hospital, I thought I was going to go on the hospital ship for 2 weeks, get all fix, patch, and you're back in the war. Like you did when you were kids and playing cowboys and fix, patch. He's back in the game. Didn't work that way. They said, you got this is going on, and so you're going to be, long-term. I said, okay. Now what do I do? But one of the fears I had was going into a VA hospital, believe it or not. I had only heard stories about VA hospitals and treatment and this, that, and the other thing. I said, oh, God, I'll be some rat-infested place, oh, God. But I was at Chelsea Naval Hospital, and it was actually excellent treatment. The doctors and nurses, the corpsmen, everybody involved. I have no complaints at all about the medical care I received in the military. The burned leg, well, accidents do happen. I know I had a couple of accidental shootings. I didn't intend it, but it happened. So they were very apologetic, obviously. In fact, all the sailors on board ship that were in the medical unit, they took a napkin out of the officer's mess, a white linen dinner napkin, and they all autographed it and presented it to me. Of all the things I've kept with me, that's one of the things I don't know what happened to it, and I wish I had it.
Right. Well, things get lost along the way, but your memory is at least there. So.
Oh, yeah. And I cherish those, too. People say, well, did you? I said, yeah, I did. I really liked the Marine Corps. I liked it a lot. I mean, the discipline, the marching, for example, I love marching. And obviously I like the rifle range. Shooting, I said, well, I wouldn't say I'm a gun fanatic. Yes, I do own them, and and I like to shoot. It's a sport. To me, it's like golf. I don't want to kill anything, not animals, not birds, not squirrels, like I used to when I was a kid. But war changes your mind about a lot of things, and you see, the value of life. And I think that's one of the lessons. Again, I have this expression, I call it the embrace of the extremes. Balance in life is achieved in the embrace of the extremes, not one extreme to the exclusion of the other, but both together or walking, I call the knife edge, to have that awareness as you're going along so that you enjoy every moment. You enjoy every moment, and you value from it. You work it into your, as I said, another expression I have is, can a tree ever say goodbye to its trunk? No. You are here today because of all the things that happened to you that brought you here. And the odd thing about my life is people, like when we used to have high school class reunion stuff, we should be having one this year, but I don't think we're going to have it. It would have been our 60th. There's not probably enough left. I don't know. Anyway, you look back at all that and you say, you use it, and you turn it to, and it's a lot to do with attitude. Taking these situations, just having another look at it altogether. For example, in my case, I say, lucky I was shot. I could have been killed.
Right.
So, again, it's attitude. So when they told me some of the dire predictions I was given in the hospital about what was going to happen to me and they're going to discharge me because I'm no longer physically fit to serve in the Marine Corps, I was not happy about that.
Right.
I got on my crutches first chance I could, took myself over to Logan Airport, flew myself down to headquarters Marine Corps, and on my crutches walked into my monitor. Your monitor is your career advisor. And there's one for every MOS, or military occupational specialty. So I was infantry. So I went down and talked to him, and I said, hey, the doctors are telling me you're going to put me out because of my injuries. He said, no, Lieutenant. Hey, if you got glass eyes and wooden legs, you want to serve the Marine Corps, we'll find a job for you. So what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm a grunt. I want a platoon and go to the field because here I am on crutches. He said, well, Lieutenant, you can stay in infantry, but I don't think you're going to the field anytime soon. So, okay. I wasn't real happy with that, so I went over to Fairfax, Virginia, to visit the colonel that I drove for the year I was in Okinawa. He's a regimental commanding officer. And in the meantime, I had got curious about data processing just because I have a curious mind. Didn't know what it was. In fact, I worked for Honeywell for a month before I joined the Marines, but I wasn't interested in anything to do with data processing at that time. But I got curious about it. And I was telling the chaplain, Father Gallagher, who was the naval chaplain at Chelsea Naval Hospital at the time, of my dilemma. I said, look, they're going to discharge me from the Marine Corps. I'm scheduled to get married in September. I don't have a job. All I can do is drive truck and kill people. And there's not a lot of call for that out there. So I'm looking at that. He said, well, my brother's a recruiter. Ironically, his brother was a recruiter for Honeywell. It was called Honeywell EDP. They were located at 60 Walnut Street. The buildings are still there. There's three of them. We're near where the Pillar House used to be, which is a landmark place, sadly. But so I'll have him come in and say, look, I'm an arts major in English, minor in French and Latin. I'm not science or math. Those are not my strong suits. He said, doesn't matter. So he came in, he tested me, he said, you're qualified. So I happened to be telling my colonel friend that I was visiting with down in Fairfax, Virginia, while I was down at headquarters about my dilemma. He said, well, the Marine Corps is looking for people to go into that field right now. I said, really? I said, yeah. I said, oh, okay. So we looked up the order. I went back over to headquarters, got a copy of the order, brought it back here to Boston, made the application, took the test, was qualified, and that's how I went from infantry to data processing, which is now called MIS.
Yeah.
And that's again, another huge change. I never thought I'd be anything to do with the sciences. And I loved it. It was new. I graduated from BU in 1975, 10 years after I joined the Marine Corps. Think about that. I joined in 65 to get a college education. 10 years later, 75, I got the degree.
That's great.
So I have a lot to be grateful for. I really, really do.
And you got married somewhere in there.
How many? Oh, yes. Somewhere in there, yes. After I got discharged from Chelsea Naval Hospital, this is crazy. It was, we're all going to Vietnam. We're graduating in November. And after that, it's sayonara, you're off overseas. It was Labor Day weekend, so this is now September. And finals are coming up at Quantico. Out of graduating, you have like final exams you have to go through and stuff, tests. So all my two roommates, Tom Staples and another guy by the name of Tierney, went back here to Boston to be home. I decided to stay there to get caught up with my work. It was a Labor Day weekend. I got it all done by Saturday night, and I'm bored. I went down to the officer's mess, and here's my good friend, Frank, Stokes from Furious, Texas. He looked like that guy. You see Pecos Pete? You know, he was kind of that kind of guy, the mustache and red face, beady red face. And he liked to drink. Mm-hmm. And so he was down there drinking. And he said, Dave, what are you doing here? I said, well, my other roommates took off. I stayed back to get my work done. I got it all done. Well, what are you doing tonight? I said, well, Frank, nothing. So we want to go up to the Bayou. It's He Bridge. It was a place called the Bayou. It used to be the rendering plant where they, slaughtered cattle and whatnot. It was a discotheque. He says it's, you pay $5, but it's all the beer you can drink. I says, hey, and there's music. And it says, the women are nothing, but, you have a good. I said, I can dance and drink beer. Sure, I can do that. Mm-hmm. So we went up in his 67 Chevrolet Super Sport Gold with mag wheels, 8-track stereo. I got pictures of that, too. He bought it right off the showroom floor. I said, wow, you went all the way with it. He said, well, I wanted the Chevy, and this is the last one they had. It was the showroom model, so I bought it. So off we go, and like I say, it was almost like an insult if you asked a woman her name even. You couldn't make conversation with it. They'd walk off before the music. All of a sudden, this group of about 5 girls all walk in, and one of them is very attractive, and she's blonde, and they're nicely dressed. Like, did you know where you were going when you came in this door? And so I spotted this beautiful blonde, blue-eyed, Joan Patricia Doyle, and I pestered her until she said yes to get out on the dance floor and dance with me. And she was very nice. We had a conversation. She told me her name. She was very, very nice. I liked her a lot, so we danced a lot that night. And then at the end of the night, I made a date with her for the next day, which is now Labor Day. It's like Sunday of Labor Day weekend. And I told Frank, hey, Frank, you know that blonde I was dancing with tonight? I made a date with her for tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, but I got a little problem. She lives in D.C., and we're in Quantico. We're 32 miles away. I can't keep the date. Can I borrow your car? I'll fill it with gas, and I'll detail it for you. What do you say? Mm-hmm. Frank's happy with that. I said, it's okay, I'm going down to the club and drink a beer. So sure enough, 10 o'clock a.m., right on the mark, I called her. She gave me her phone number on her check, her personal check. And she says, I gave you the half with my name on it because you were so plastered, I didn't think you'd remember my name. Well, I wasn't plastered. But anyway, and I still have that check with that phone number. So right on the dot at 10 o'clock, her mother wakes up. Joan, the submarine here says he knows you, he wants to talk to you. So I had no idea what we were going to do. I put a tennis racket in, I put in swimming trunks, I put in a nice suit and a shirt and a tie and bathing suit. I had no idea what we were going to do. Mm-hmm. So I drives up there, I finds the place we go out. We went paddling on the Potomac is the first thing we did. After that, we get back. Now what do we do? Oh, let's rent bikes and ride up the towpath. People said, what, David, you were giving her, I was giving her a physical fitness test early. That was our first date. And then we went out to eat, and then I drove back to Quantico. Well, on the second date, I decided that I wanted to ask this woman to be the mother of my children. That's exactly how I proposed to her. And where this comes from, and this is important, you always see this before the troops deploy into combat. There is this sudden rise in engagements and weddings and everything else. Mm-hmm. That's Darwin. That's survival of the fittest. That's your biology talking to you. You want to continue yourself, and there's a good chance, even though you don't want to admit it, that's your biology talking to you. That's what that's really all about. Wake up, Joe.
Right.
So sure enough, we're going out on our second date after a Washington Senators baseball game to our usual Italian restaurant, and I asked her to be the mother of my children. She became very, very quiet, didn't say anything, and she wept. I said, geez, most women would be happy if you said that. Well, I wonder what I said wrong, And I asked her, and she wouldn't tell me. Anyway, to make a long story longer, that was the September before I went to Vietnam. Okay, that was September. I was in Vietnam 5 December, so it was a very short courtship, to say the least. But I wrote her every single day from Vietnam. Every day I wrote her. And I also sent back these little 3-inch tapes, reel-to-reel tapes. Back then, really way back. And have all that stuff. So I got out of the hospital the end of August. We married on September 21st, 1968. Stationed to Quantico for a while. Then I went to headquarters of the Marine Corps, and that sort of ended my career, to say the least. Mm-hmm. And that brought us back up to Boston, because I wanted to go to Boston because I wanted to be a place that had medical facilities, VA, et cetera, and access to colleges. And Boston fit the bill. It wasn't because it was my home. It fit the bill. And luckily enough, I was hired as a systems programmer by State Street Bank and Trust Company, where I worked for 6.5 years. And we had our 3 children, pretty much born and raised in Milton, 2 boys and a girl. They are now 51, 47, and 45. 2 boys and a girl. Anyway, yeah, so that marriage went on for about, well, I think about at the 5-year mark for some reason or other, I was not as happy as I wanted to be and couldn't put my finger on it. And it's a little thought, and you sort of throw it away, and you just forget that. You just go on, get on with your life. But it keeps coming back, and it keeps coming back. And for me, it got stronger and stronger. It went on for like 12 years. And being a Catholic, no, don't divorce. And no one in our family is divorced. You don't do that, you know? And that weighed heavily on me, so heavily that it really caused me to do some strange things. Like I started drinking too much alcohol, one of them. And at a certain point, I realized, you know, and we did everything. We did counseling, we did joint counseling, we did marriage counseling, we did separate counseling. We did it all together. Not like we didn't try. I mean, we did. We're two good, honest people, but we were just about as alike as oil and water, you know. I'm outdoors, active. She's shy. So anyway, we separated for a year in '85. For 6 months, I took an apartment over in Quincy, and just to keep things going, I gave her a check for $700 every week. Not by court order, not by her request. I know she has household expenses to take care of. In that period of time, we went through some intense marriage counseling ourselves. And after that period, I moved back in September of that same year. And I was happy when we got back because I feel all these things that were under the carpet and, you know, causing ripples and everything else were settled. But by that time, she had kind of lost, I think, faith in the marriage. I stuck it out for another 4.5 years and realized that it's dead. It's dead. Time to move on. So we separated in '89, which eventually led to my divorce. Then I met the international Rose of Tralee, Geraldine Ann Fitzgerald from Cambridge, Massachusetts. Born and raised in London, England, the Knightsbridge section of England. She has a beautiful, beautiful English accent, and she was beautiful. Very, very smart, too. She had double promotions through grammar school and high school, came to this country at 13 years old, and by that time she was a walking, talking pharmacy for any kind of illegal drug you could imagine. She had done them all. And an exquisite ballroom dancer, danced at the old Boston Ballroom on Massachusetts Avenue in Cambridge. And since she was so beautiful, all these older men were dying to teach her how to dance, so she was a good dancer, too. And in fact, we live right over here, a block from where we're sitting, when I moved back here from Detroit. But she was a recovered alcoholic, and unfortunately, at the time, I drank, not just normally, just, you know, O'Doul's and in Manhattan now and then. And I asked her, I said, okay, you don't mind if I keep my liquor here in the... Oh, no, it doesn't bother me. No. Foolishly, I said, okay, you know. And one time I came back here from Detroit on one of my bi-weekly visits, and she said, something terrible happened. I said, what happened? She said, well, one night I drank all the liquor in the house. I said, oh, my God. And I didn't know what to do about this. I had no idea what to do, none whatsoever. I don't know. What do I do? Do I sympathize? Do I criticize? What do I do? I didn't know. And unfortunately, it continued and it got worse. And so when she died on October 29th of 2004, it was the culmination of the drug abuse over the years, food nutrition, smoking. She had emphysema. She had cancer. You know, complete breakdown. But so we were married on paper for 3 years, but only lived under the same roof for 6 months.
Yeah.
And I went through 5 detoxes with her in 2 years. And she just wasn't cooperating with any of them. And that was very, very sad.
So that brings me to asking about your current activities with the barbershop.
Oh, yes. Billy's Barbershop, the Resource Reclamation Center, located at 151 Andover Street here in Lowell. It's in between High Street and Route 38, which is called Nesmith Street. There's a little BP gas station there in the corner. We're tucked right in the corner. We've been in existence now. We're going to our 6th year. And all the people at the barbershop, men have friends. They call them fellas. All my friends are felons. Yes, they've all been, they've used drugs. They've been addicted. They've recovered. They've all done a significant amount of jail time. And they've seen the light. And the main person there is Billy Cabrera himself. And I think so highly of him. I've adopted him as my son. And I consider him that way. He's in my will. It's in writing. He has a copy of it. This is not just BS we're throwing out here. I believe so much in the work that they're doing. You know, again, we get back to that embrace of the extremes. If you take a circle, imagine a circle. You put a dot in the middle, draw one line up, a half circle up above it, and a half line below it. It's like an S. It's also, I didn't know it, but it's the yin and yang. But it's a matter of capacity for living. So those who have the capacity to do the things that some of these guys did, on the other side of it, when they get there, and it takes a lot of work for them to get there, and that's why we're there to support them in doing that, they're amazing. They don't need a message. They are the message. That's why I love to have them on the radio and talk to them about what they've done. There are some amazing stories. I was playing a story about this fellow by the name of Antoine, who grew up in Boston. He never knew who his real father was. He had multiple fathers. His mother was alcoholic. But when you hear his story and all that they go through, it's amazing. But when they turn around, when they talk to kids, they know what they're talking about, and kids listen. And so we have a program they call the Fatherhood Program and the Step Up Dad Program. It's an 8-week-long program, meets for 2 hours every Tuesday night. I forget the exact, you can call the barbershop and get the exact date of it, because they're ongoing. We run maybe 1, 2, if we're lucky, 3, 1 year. And these are dads that are in recovery. They're out of incarceration. We used to have, after they complete that program, they actually get a certificate of graduation, which they can take to the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and the Commonwealth Department of Revenue will make a financial adjustment on their obligations. Because these guys, among other things, have a tremendous financial obligation, child support, this, that, the other, legal fees, on and on. They even now, they pay for probation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's $15 a visit, something like that. But anyway, so that's what we do. And we meet together, and it's a lot of sharing. It is a structured program that was actually modeled after the Massachusetts General Hospital Fatherhood Program under the direction of Dr. Levy. Also, the Harvard Medical School also had a program similar. But what made us different was our population, the unique background, both incarceration and addiction that you're dealing with. Okay? So we've tailored that program to our own needs and our own population, and it is tremendous. It is tremendous. So we had a postgraduate follow-on every Tuesday night. It used to be every other Tuesday night, and the guys themselves said, we're getting so much out of this. It's only an hour-long meeting, goes from 6 to 7 on Tuesday evenings. Everybody is welcome. You're always welcome. Don't feel shy. Come in, make yourself at home, have a cup of coffee, chit-chat. If you're in recovery, you need some help, you need transportation, I'm your guy. You need clothes, I can have some clothes. We have clothes. We have socks. We have underwear. We can get you a haircut. We can get you shelter for the night. We can get you to your meeting, whatever it is you have to do. And the support and what comes out of these men is just absolutely phenomenal. And that to me is the inspiration. I said, I admire you guys. I mean, I did what I did, but I didn't have anywhere near the obstacles that you guys have overcome. And in fact, I just completed 2 days of training. I completed my last full day of training over at the Center for Hope and Healing. We work very, very closely with the Center for Hope and Healing right down here on George Street near the 3rd Street Courthouse, that professional building that sort of stands at right near UTEC. It's about, I'm going to be an advocate for sexually abused people. And there is the hotline, there's medical help, there's legal help. It's a month-long course that meets 3 nights a week for 3 hours from 6 to 9. And we're doing training in the barbershop for that as well. And we have made some outstanding contacts. There's a fellow, a man by the name of Justice. That's his name, Justice. He's a black dude. He's from center of Boston, and he is a riot. He's a trans guy, so he teaches a lot of the classes too. And he is, in fact, the Center for Hope and Healing was so impressed with his career, and Billy's too, that they want to bring them on as staff. So they go around the country running these programs. They've actually run out of Washington, D.C. The trainings come out of Washington, D.C. It's called, what the hell's it called now? I wrote it down. Anyway, Strong, I think. No, Most. That's the name of it, Most. And don't ask me to break the acronym down. But it's about men being men. And one of the things that we see, particularly with our own population, and you see it everywhere today, there's a lack of good models for men. There is a lot of sexual abuse and sexual violence that goes on. And believe me, it goes on. It's very strong, and it's particularly in Lowell, Lawrence. There's a lot of it, and so what we're trying to do is change the outlook of men and boys by eliminating, first of all, cleaning up language. That has a big thing. That's a big part of it. The rap music, the lyrics, and some of those music. You program yourself with that day in and day out. You're going to be doing that. Like to say, you hang around a barbershop, you're going to get a haircut. You hang around with the wrong crowd, you're going to get in trouble too. Mm-hmm. So the guys, by their own request, said rather than having these meetings bi-weekly, we'd like to have them weekly. So now, by popular demand, they're weekly. Mm-hmm. And they're very supportive. We also have plans. So we're working very closely with the Center for Hope and Healing. We want to bring that into the shop as well, and then ourselves become advocates for this kind of work. Breaking down barriers and establishing. It's really, I was surprised, and I guess naive, how different females are treated in other cultures than they are in what we think should be the norm, the proper way of treating gender. Anyway, so that's what I learned in Vietnam. No.
Yeah. So we're about out of time, but thank you for coming. And
it's been enjoyable. Thank you.
It was a lot of fun, and I appreciate all that you've done, as a Marine, and all you continue to do as a advocate for addicts and other people who are having some trouble. And I'll see you around the hearing room, I'm sure.
Indeed.
So we've been talking with David Tierney. You can also hear him on WUML, UMass Lowell Radio. What's the call sign?
91.5 on the FM dial, the home of true underground radio.
Yep, and you're the mouth of the Merrimack, as I know.
The leatherneck with the leather lungs, the man whose last name sounds like taxation without representation. Now what would that be? Tyranny, you got it. That's me.
That's right. And you are on Mondays and Tuesdays
9 to noon.
From
roughly.
9 to noon. Okay. So if you want to listen to him on WUML.
And if you have a story to tell, I'm interested in talking to you and get you on the radio and hear about it.
Yeah, well, if you contact me, I'll put you in touch with David. So thank you very much. And this is the Hearing Room, the Woodshed podcast. And please become a member if you can come out and check it out. It's hearingroom.net is where you find out about our programming and membership. Also, thank you to the Greenville Junction Shop for their support. And have a great week.
If you start with